There was a promise of rest that the Israelites did not find when they came into the land. The writer of Hebrews tells us that. But Jesus is our rest. He is where we can rest from our labors. We can lay it down and rest in Him. Because you see, we're running and fighting and we're trying to do all these great things for God. I promise you, God, this is what I'll do. And He's saying, no, enter into a Sabbath rest instead. Stop from your works. Enter into my rest. Take it easy. Rest in me. That doesn't mean there's no work. Did you ever watch a small bird fly? Man, they work hard at it. I have an office with a window that is in the way that my desk is set up and stuff. If I just look up, I'm looking right out the window. It's not a great view. I mean, I'm in kind of a suburb area, and there's right in front of me is like this plastics plant where they build these big plastic things. And off to my right, there is a veterinarian hospital there. And I think it's because of that, there's this little grove of trees behind that and then more shopping areas behind. But there are a lot of birds in that area. And I think it's because of the animal stuff there. I don't know. There's a lot of birds there. I think I've seen 2 or 3 red-tailed hawks there. I think I might have actually seen an eagle there, although I'm not sure. I'm not that great a bird person. But it's interesting for me to watch the difference between a small bird and something like a hawk or an eagle fly. Did you ever notice that? The little birds, man, they are working their little feathers off. Right? Oh, man, gotta go faster. And they are just going like crazy. And they're flying. And they're getting around, and they actually, what's fun for me to watch is they'll get in these big flocks, and they'll chase off one of those hawks. These little bitty birds. And they don't care. They're like going after him, and finally he gives up and flies away. But you know how he flies? There's no effort. He's just there. He's just gliding on the air. That's a little bit like us when we're working and we're doing it. And it's our works. And man, we're doing it. And I'm staying in the Lord so far. And when we enter into His rest, well, Isaiah says it like this. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings, not like sparrows, like eagles. That's the rest of the Lord. That's the rest. That's where we're really supposed to be. The fourth thing that they pledged, and this takes up the rest of chapter 10, starts in verse 32. It said, we made ordinances for ourselves to exact from ourselves yearly 1/3 of a shekel for the service of the house of our God. They put a temple tax on themselves. That yearly, they were going to be taxed to pay off the temple. For the showbread, for the regular grain offering, for the regular burnt offering of the Sabbath, the new moons, the set feasts, the holy things, for the sin offerings, to make atonement for Israel and all the work of the house of God. It takes money to do all that stuff. You got to keep the place working. We cast lots among the priests, the Levites, and the people for bringing the wood offering into the house of our God. Now, if you look up wood offering in the Old Testament, you won't find one. What it's talking about is those bringing the wood for the other offerings, for the sacrifices. It takes a lot of wood to burn sacrifices every day. And they saw that as an offering, as, hey, this is doing the Lord's work too, bringing the wood into the temple. We'll do that. And we'll cover that. We made ordinances to bring the first fruits of our ground and the first fruits of all the fruit of all the trees year by year to the house of the Lord. So they taxed themselves. Okay, this is what we have to give, no matter what I have. This, 1/3 of a shekel. But on top of that, from the first fruits of everything that I get throughout the year, I will bring it to the Lord. So it's their set amount and then their offering, giving unto the Lord, to take care of the temple and to take care of all of the work of the temple. And they would bring the firstborn of our sons and our cattle, as it is written in the law, and the firstborn of our herds, of our flocks, to the house of our God, to the priests who minister in the house of our God. To bring the first fruits of our dough, our offerings, the fruit from all kinds of trees, the new wine, the oil, to the storerooms of the house of our God, and to bring the tithes of our land to the Levites, for the Levites should receive the tithes in all our farming communities. And the priest, the descendant of Aaron, shall be with the Levites when the Levites receive the tithes, and the Levites shall bring up a tenth of the tithes to the house of our God, to the rooms of the storehouse. For the children of Israel and the children of Levi shall bring the offering of grain, of new wine, and oil to the storerooms, where the articles of the sanctuary are, where the priests who minister and the gatekeepers and the singers are, and we will not neglect the house of our God. They're saying, we're going to take care of the church. We're going to keep it going. We're going to make sure the lights are on. We're going to make sure the heat's on. We're going to make sure that things are taken care of there so we can continue on. And we see this as a blessing to God, and this is what we're going to do. We promise to do that, to keep the storerooms cared for, supplying the wood for the sacrifices, the temple tax, the first fruit offerings. So they enter into this covenant. And then you are welcome to read chapter 11 and the first half of chapter 12 on your own. It's a lot of lists. It's a lot of people's names, talking about who was there and who was living where. But we pick it up again in verse 27 of chapter 12 of the book of Nehemiah. And now they're going to have a dedication service. They finished the wall, and it'd been going for a while, but now they're going to dedicate it. And through verse 27 through 13:3, and we're not going to read through all of this, but basically what they did was they got everybody together and had a huge day-long celebration of joy, and they put 2 Thanksgiving choirs together. I like that. That's actually what it's called. Look it up. Thanksgiving choirs. 2 Thanksgiving choirs. And they set them, they got up on the wall on the western side, and one choir went north, and one choir went south, and walked along the top of the wall till they came over to the eastern part of the wall, and then they came down and entered into the temple from the east, which is the way that you would always enter into the temple. The temple faced to the east. And they're singing, and they're playing instruments, and they are rejoicing, and rejoicing, and rejoicing. And then there was a dedication of the servants. They said, we will follow you, Lord. We will follow you. And it recounts who is there. And in verse 44 it says, and at the same time some were appointed over the rooms of the storehouse of the offerings and the first fruits and tithes, to gather them from the fields of the cities in portions specified by law. We have a Levite, his name is Pastor Dave, and every Sunday he takes the offering box and he takes it and he opens up and counts it and fills out the deposit slip and then gives it to Krista and I, and Krista takes care of getting it into the bank and so forth. But what they were doing, they weren't giving checks and so forth. They were bringing in a cartload of beans and potatoes and rhubarb and stuff. So somebody had to take care of this, and they had to have storerooms to care for it. So that's what they did. And it says that, verse 45, both the singers and the gatekeepers kept the charge of God and the charge of the purification according to the command of David and Solomon his son. And basically what it's saying is they had a paid choir. They had a paid worship team. They were there. That was their job. That's all they did. In the days of David and Asaph of old, there were chiefs of the singers and songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. Man, they're setting things up. And in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah, all Israel gave the portions for the singers and the gatekeepers, a portion for each day. So they paid the worship team, they paid the janitors. Everybody, they're taking care of it. Lord, we're going to take care of the church. We are going to follow you. We're going to stay separate. We're going to keep the Sabbath law. We are going to do all of these things. That's what they set in place. That's what they promised.